we are going to explore the instructive topic of exchange sacrifice. So before I start discussing the position, let me talk a bit about what is exchange sacrifice and how that can be helpful for us in certain positions. So in simple words, exchange sacrifice means sacrificing a rook for a minor piece of the opponent. You are not aware about the word exchange sacrifice, you might be thinking it might be something related to maybe in the series of exchanging we might be doing something. So in a way it is true that we are exchanging something, but still it's a very specific term for a very specific sacrifice, that is sacrificing the rook for a minor piece. Now of course we are giving up material in that, and what can be some reasons that can do that. So one of the biggest reasons why exchange sacrifice is given is to weaken opponent's king. So in the middle game, that's one of the important things. Sometimes it is given to restrict opponent's pieces and then put more pressure. In endgame, it can be given to either activate your king, to either get a pass pawn, or to activate more of your pieces. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to look at some different examples today, and then we'll see in what circumstances we should consider exchange sacrifice and how that can be helpful for us in gaining the advantage. So let's start with the first position. So this is white to play here. Now as I can notice, white's up a pawn, so that's a good thing, but this f4 pawn is under pressure, this h5 pawn is under pressure, this centralized knight is quite active. Both of these rooks are on the open file, but it is not able to get to the 7th rank because rook, the knight are there. So despite being up a pawn, it's clear that so the opponent, that black, that is down a pawn, has some activity. So we should be a bit careful. Now there is one thing that we can notice in this position is this is a pass pawn indeed, and then these 3 pawns are there. It is just being blocked by this 1 pawn. So if that pawn is not there, then these would be triple connected pass pawns. That's great, right? Now, which is the most active piece in opponent's position? Definitely we can say that the centralized knight. So this rook is also quite close, but the centralized knight can create a lot of issues. Now in this position, white can actually do something to not only eliminate one of the most active or the most active piece of black, but also do something about this pawn majority. So white in this position can play rook takes d5. What's the idea behind that? Of course, if he takes d5, then this rook goes, but let's say in this position, opponent is not going to play that, opponent will play rook takes d5. So then what can be done? Rook c7 check, getting the rook on the 7th rank with the tempo, because now the knight is not controlling this and the rook had to capture. So that was one of our ideas. What next? Rook e7. That's extremely important thing. So it's time to give up this pass pawn, but then once we capture this pass pawn, we'll have triple connected pass pawns actually, and that would be too much for opponent to handle. By the way, we should not be in a rush, because if we play h6, I don't want to give up the pawn. That will create some issues for us because b4 is coming, because this, it's connected. We can play h7, looks dangerous, but rook h5 and not the position we would want to play. So not a rush. Let's give up a pass pawn, but create 3 pass pawns actually. So rook takes h5, rook takes e6, and then it's just time to push the pass pawns, and this is just too much for black to handle. So here it was important to recognize that although we are up a pawn, but because of opponent's active pieces, our pieces are restricted and we're not able to make much of a progress. But after eliminating that knight, not only we were able to get our rook active, but we were able to eliminate that important pawn, and because of that we got triple connected pass pawns, and that was just too much for black to handle. So in this example, one of the main things why we sacrificed the exchange was not just to activate our pieces, but also to deal with opponent's active pieces and, more importantly, create pass pawns. Alright, so now let's go for the next position. So this is white to play here. Now, middle game position, only a pawn has been exchanged. So many things are going on. Let's try to understand this. So material is equal. So there is definitely some pressure on black's king side because of this. But at the same time, we can say there can be some pressure on white's king side as well. Maybe this is one. This e5 is an outpost square. There can be some sacrifice. I'm not saying immediately. Of course, the query is covering that, but just potentially showing certain ideas. This pawn is an h4. So g3 is an outpost square. You never know actually. You have to be a bit cautious. So there are certain imbalances in the position. So what should white try to do? So it's very important that white has definite activity on the king side. So white should try to continue with that. So in this position, white should play g5. So what's the idea? The idea is, of course, this knight is actually trapped. So but it's not going to be that easy. So we can capture it with the rook. Now bishop e3. This is a bit of a question. So it's very important that when you play g5, you should see this move of black. That now black is actually, we are attacking the knight. Black is like, I'll attack your rook. And if the rook moves somewhere, then this pawn will fall. And suddenly black will get some activity. So it's very important to see this far. So then in this position, what should we try to do? So see, it's very important that we can continue. By the way, see, please remember, you don't want to be like, you reach this position and then you start thinking, no, that would not be the correct idea. I'm making the moves and then showing you, so it will become a bit easier for you. But all of these things that I'm explaining, you should do that before playing g5. Otherwise, if that thing is not working, then you can get into trouble. So now the question is what to do. If we move the rook, we lose the pawn. Then we have to keep up the pressure on the king side, and that pawn plays an important role. So the rook should not be moved. So what should we do? Should we take the knight? Not so easy. This bishop is actually quite active. So we don't want that knight. We want to target that bishop. What to do about it? So if we can target it, then we can do this with tempo, sacrificing the exchange, but keeping the activity. Now that active bishop is gone, so we can recapture. Now the knight had only this square to go. So good for us. Queen is being attacked. We have to be a bit careful. So it's time to capture the pawn. This knight is once again under tremendous pressure. If black plays bishop g6, then there is bishop h3, f3. This knight is gone. But okay, black can be like, okay, I'll play g6. See. So white has sacrificed an exchange, the rook, for a minor piece, and has gotten a pawn as well for that. So but still, white is down in material. But look at the other things. Look at this bishop diagonal now. Look at the absence of this bishop. Look at this passive knight on h5. Look at this completely restricted bishop on h7. So much things. So we have gained because of the sacrifice. And then we can play knight d1 in this position. What's the idea? Not only just clearing this diagonal for the bishop, but also planning for knight f2, or knight e3. And then we can bring the knight to g4. Then maybe knight f6. Maybe knight h6. Then in the meantime, we'll bring the rook also on f1. What will black do because of those restricted pieces? Because of our own active pieces? Yeah, it's a completely dominating position for white. So what changed? What changed is the fact that we sacrificed the exchange, but at the same time, so what happened after that is that active bishop of the opponent got lost, and in the quest of trying to save this knight, opponent's bishop got restricted. So it's good, and this diagonal opened up. So we sacrificed the exchange, but the main point was that not only we got a pawn for that, but that was not the main thing. It was about how opponent's active piece was gone. Number one, how opponent's pieces got restricted. Number two, how our pieces got further active. And another thing, we are still aiming at the king side, and how the king side got weaker. So that's the main point. This time it was combination of all actually. Weakening opponent's king, activating our pieces, restricting our opponent's pieces, and exchanging active pieces of our opponent. So for these reasons, yeah, we can give exchange sacrifice in the middle game as well.